guys, so I have been a doctor and I've also been a farmer. In fact, I am a farmer, but also I'm a doctor. Can I say I'm a doctor? Yes, I can say I'm a doctor, despite the fact that I haven't practiced medicine from January 2021, yeah? So it's now what, 2025, over 4 years that I haven't practiced medicine. You can still call me a doctor because in medicine, you don't retire, yeah? I'm still a registered doctor. I might not have a valid practicing license. I might need to do a bit of refresher stuff to remember, but in case I wanted to go back, I still can. Anyway, I've worked as a doctor and I've also worked as a farmer, and a lot of times I hear a lot of debates when people are talking and they're like, how could you leave being a doctor to become a farmer? That just doesn't make sense. I mean, most people are outside there, farmers are outside there wishing that they could become doctors. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense that you could leave this noble profession of being a doctor to go become a farmer. But also, I do know a lot of doctors who, after watching my YouTube videos, want to become farmers. They're just thinking to themselves, I want to become like that guy. I like what that guy is doing. Well, in today's video, I'm just going to be sharing with you guys the comparison between the life of a doctor and of a farmer and what I personally, do prefer. And again, this is very personal. Now, for a lot of you who want to quit, you could use it as an example. You want to quit as a doctor and become a farmer, you could use it as an example, or the other way around. Now, I probably wouldn't be the best person to actually advise on someone who wants to become a doctor, because I mean, I haven't been there for a while. Things could have changed. But hey, just stick around because I do believe by the end of this video, you're actually going to be really inspired. So we'll start with the most basic things. Which one is more enjoyable? Yeah, being a farmer and being a doctor. And I will say it really depends on a lot of things. Now, I do remember when I was a doctor, I loved doing surgeries. Yeah, now, of course, I hadn't specialized to become a surgeon, but this is Uganda, and in Uganda, there are what would be considered minor surgeries. I don't think they're even minor surgeries. They're actually proper surgeries that we would do that maybe someone would need to specialize to do in some other countries, maybe in Western countries, but we would do right here. And I personally enjoyed it every time I was doing a surgery. Unfortunately, every time the surgery was done and I was seated down writing the surgical notes, or I don't know, having to see patients and it's not surgeries and all these kinds of things, I found it so boring. I found it so uninteresting. I just didn't find it nice at all. And the thing that I hated the most about working as a doctor was loss of life. Yeah, I do personally remember there is a week that I was working on this internal medicine ward. The internal medicine is where you find diseases which are not treated using surgery. I don't know the most basic way of explaining it, but yeah, I was on the internal medicine ward during internship. And I do remember this particular week where we actually had more deaths than discharges. It was really pathetic, really sad, really terrible. Yeah, that week was really, really terrible. And that week made me really feel sad. And sometimes you get emotionally attached to some patients and things like that. So because of that, I find that, honestly speaking, I didn't enjoy practicing medicine as much. Farming, on the other side, first of all, there might not be too much excitement, but the beauty that I enjoy most about farming is the new stuff that is consistently being done. Yeah. For example, if we're getting new animals onto the farm, a new batch of animals, maybe we are expanding. You guys have been seeing how we are constructing new chicken houses and expanding the new chicken houses and things like that. That's really exciting, very, very beautiful. Knowing that we are putting up our 5th chicken house, that we need to make this kind of changes. The technicalities of we are modifying the house this way and all this kind of stuff. We are getting on new goats, new sheep onto the farm. I find that to be very, very interesting. So for me speaking in that aspect, I find that farming is way more interesting compared to medicine. Next up is potential for growth. There is great potential for growth in both aspects. Now, potential for growth, what are we talking about? We are talking about generally as a career. Me as a farmer will just say that's my career right now. So me, while working as a doctor, of course, I didn't get to specialize because I noticed that it's probably not something that's made for me much earlier on. And at that time, I knew that if I'm going to, become a much better doctor, I'm probably going to have to go back, study a master's degree, probably a second master's degree, maybe do some fellowship in something, all that kind of stuff for me to, become better and grow in that career. Yeah, and it would probably have taken me maybe 4 years, maybe 3 years, then maybe 4 more years and things like that. On the side of being a farmer, growth really just depends on how quickly you learn. Now, that's the other advantage I find about being a farmer compared to being a doctor, yeah, is that the growth in the career is really dependent on your ambition. Yeah, and there's no restriction on how quickly or how slowly you can go. So in medicine, I would have had to study maybe 2 years or 3 years, and then maybe another year as a fellowship for something, then it's something like that. With farming, there's nothing like that. I mean, I was thrown into the deep, yeah? So I started out with just 800 chickens in 2019, and by the end of 2021, I was running a 400-acre farm. Can you imagine? So the potential for growth, because there's no control, you know, you're not being controlled by anyone or anything outside, is much higher when it does come to farming. And that's another thing that really excites me. For me, it feels like there's no ceiling. Completely no ceiling. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and get as big as I want. The third thing would be freedom. The freedom to do what I want, whenever I want, from wherever I want. Whew. You can tell what is better, I mean, in this regard. Farming, of course, yeah? Now, when I was a doctor, I had to follow particular rules because I wasn't working for my own self. I wasn't working in my own hospital. And so I had to follow, you know, rules in terms of like, you know, work hours, how much time I spend at work, you know, when I show up, which days I show up, and all those kinds of things. The thing I want to tell you is that it's probably a little bit worse when it does come to farming, especially when you're starting out. Because when I was starting out as a farmer, especially if you're going to be involved yourself and doing the stuff yourself, you're going to have to be present, especially if you're doing a poultry farm. Now, if you're doing maybe a cattle farm, it might be different. You guys can see that we do have cows over here in the background. I'm on the bigger farm, the 400-acre farm. And we have just a few cows, yeah? I mean, a while back, we had over 150 cows. I noticed that compared to, you know, goats and sheep, to chickens, it's really a loss. really, really a loss. So we decided to downsize. We have a few of them here. We still have a few that moved out and, you know, they are grazing. But, I mean, most of them were cut down. I think we are probably down to like 20, for which we get some milk, give some of the milk to the, you know, the sheep, the goats, and then, you know, sell some on the outside, which is really cool. I mean, really, really cool. But it's not something that I specialize on, yeah? Now, because poultry farming requires a lot of focus and attention, at the beginning it's going to take up a lot of your time. And it's probably you're probably going to work much harder than if you're working a 9-to-5 job. But then with time, later on, as you know, get a bigger farm, probably get more money, you're going to have to hire more people, you're going to get managers and things like that. You're going to get a lot of free time. So personally, I do have a lot of free time to do the kinds of things that I would love to do at any time from anywhere. And that's really beautiful, guys. That's very, very beautiful. On the other side, being a doctor, like I said, you can't do that. You really can't do that as a doctor, and you know, you have to follow some form of schedule. But the other thing is that I mean, when it does come to human lives, forget about the time. Again, you can't just do what you want. You can't make experiments with human lives. Now, unfortunately, this might sound really terrible for some of you guys, but I can do experiments with poultry. I can do experiments with feeding on poultry. For example, I can decide to try out a different kind of feed. Yeah, maybe it might not be as nourishing to the birds, but I just want to see the productivity and how it affects them and things like that. I mean, there is way more room to play around and gamble and even make mistakes. I mean, a few chickens could die over there and no one is going to come and arrest you. I mean, I'm just being honest about that. Of course, morally, you should have the presence of mind in your heart to understand that, you know, I shouldn't be making the animals suffer or torture them, but the consequences are much less, yeah? So I personally feel like in terms of freedom to do what I want, whenever I want, it's much, much easier as a farmer compared to being a doctor, yeah? Right now, I have a lot of free time, a lot of free time. Of course, I utilize that free time to now do other things, so just like that, it stops being free time. But absolutely, as a farmer, I have way more time than I would have as a doctor. The next one is the social aspect of it. So the social recognition or your social standing with people. Now, of course, without a doubt, for this, the win goes to being a doctor. Now, luckily enough, despite the fact that I stopped practicing medicine 4 years ago, people still do call me doctor. I think because the name just stuck. Yeah, a lot of them know that I don't practice medicine. Many of them still think I practice medicine because they hear people calling me doctor. But I find that I personally don't care what people call me. Yeah. So in the community, of course, if people hear you're a doctor and people hear that someone else is a farmer, I'll even tell you something interesting. Many years ago, I do remember that the profession of being a farmer in Uganda was actually called peasant farmer. Can you imagine? They wouldn't just say farmer, they would say peasant farmer. You would never find the word farmer written alone. They would have to really add the word peasant. Can you imagine how terrible that is? Or how terrible that was? Anyway, then we were peasant farmers. Right now, I'm not a peasant farmer. I'm certainly not a peasant farmer, considering I even make much more money than a lot of doctors. But in terms of general pride and esteem, people will regard a junior doctor who has just graduated recently and they barely make any money. They regard them at a higher position than me when they meet me. And you'll be surprised. When I go somewhere and people ask me, what's your profession? What do you do for work? Do you know what I tell them? I'm a farmer. What's your profession? Farmer. Yeah. So I've embraced the position of being a farmer so much, and I personally love it and I enjoy it. And honestly speaking, I think I don't care whether people call me a doctor or a farmer. It doesn't matter to me. But for most people, that does matter. And then finally, we're going to talk about finances. Now, of course, the reason I quit to become a full-time farmer is because I was making more money from being a farmer compared to being a doctor. So this is going to be a very unbalanced thing for me to say, though I'm going to try and argue it out. Yeah? What you need to understand is that both doctors and farmers can make a lot of money. A lot of money. Now, on average, doctors certainly do make more money than farmers because there's so many farmers outside there. Peasant farmers, people, just like you said, peasant farmers. People who grow up, just growing, vegetables and things like that. Maybe they keep a few chickens and things like that. And there's a minimum wage for a doctor, for which, we don't expect anything below that. So generally speaking, doctors are going to earn way more money compared to farmers. But farmers have a much higher ceiling compared to doctors, yeah? Because farmers generally become businessmen. They're not just someone who is just employed or something like that. Most of them are business owners. Personally, I'm a business owner because I do own my farm, yeah, and I'm able to make money out of the farm. So in terms of finances, the ceiling is much higher, i.e. the potential to make money is much, much higher when it does come to a farmer compared to a doctor. But in general regard, on average, you're going to make more money as a doctor compared to being a farmer. Luckily enough for me, I quit being a doctor to become a farmer because being a farmer was earning me more than being a doctor. So generally speaking, in conclusion, you can certainly tell that I do love this farming life and my experience as a farmer. Would I recommend it for anyone outside there? 100%. Do I think it's perfect for you? Well, it's all up to you. You need to sit down and consider what you want. Maybe for you, being called a doctor is very important. Maybe for you, you love the added security of, I can't earn below this. What if something happens to the farm and something like that and I lose money? Yeah. So it's something that you need to consider personally. But I've personally enjoyed being a farmer much, much more than being a doctor. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, smash the notification bell. Catch you very soon with another video. Lots of love. Bye-bye.